What's up, everybody? JT Sports. I'm back to you guys with another video. And before I begin, make sure you like the video and subscribe. I upload NFL videos and NFL content daily. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. And let's get into it. So I'm going to be talking about the year 2 expectations for sophomore wide receiver James Washington of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I already know what the roster is looking like, but for a lot of people who aren't Pittsburgh Steelers fans, they think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are in trouble losing Antonio Brown and whatnot, and that's far from the case. I mean, Antonio Brown, yeah, he's going to be a loss, but I mean, the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the franchise history, good wide receivers had came and go. I mean, you have to go back to the early days of the Pittsburgh Steelers there in the 70s when we had the Lynn Swans of the world. And then near 2010s when we had the Antoine Randalls, we had the Santonio Holmes, we had the Hines Wards of the world. So wide receiver has never really been an issue. And although without Antonio Brown, our the wide receiver position looks a little bit iffy as of right now, but that's just because of the names. I mean, yeah, the wide receiver position for some people is going to look a little bit scarce because, I mean, you're losing Antonio Brown, who is arguably one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in all of football. And then you had Juju Smith-Schuster. So you only had Juju Smith-Schuster, and a bunch of other people would just look at a depth chart and they'd be like, wow, who are these people? And the person who is going to determine, in my opinion, the biggest success of the Pittsburgh Steelers when it comes to the receiving core next year is going to have to be James Washington. Now, I believe James Washington, even if we do draft the wide receiver in this year's draft, which I highly expect it, I don't know if it's going to be the first round or whatnot, but even if we do draft the wide receiver, I still expect James Washington to most likely be the number 2 wide receiver. Now, he's 5'11", He's 5'11". He has pretty good size for a slot wide receiver. He wouldn't really make your ideal outside wide receiver, but I mean, he's pretty good. I like him in the slot and as an outside number 2 option at wide receiver. And he had a pretty rough rookie year for the most part. Besides when he came on near the end of the season, Big Ben was raving about this guy all preseason, all training camp. And then Big Ben, he showed him some tough love after the loss to Denver, after James Washington dropped like a big pass. It was a big, deep pass. I've been watching the game. James Washington dropped it. He also dropped a couple of big passes in some other games. I believe he dropped one against the New England Patriots. And he just had a really rough year. And Big Ben, after he kind of, showed James Washington some tough love after that Denver Broncos game, James Washington played better down the stretch near the end of the season. But overall, he had a pretty disappointing rookie year. He was targeted 38 times and only caught near half of those. He only caught 16 of those 38 targets. Had 217 yards and only 1 touchdown. And most rookie wide receivers struggle in their rookie year, so I'm not really worried about it because Mike Williams, he's starting to come on. He came on last year with the LA Chargers. There's a lot of rookie wide receivers that don't really have crazy, phenomenal rookie seasons like that. And James Washington, I believe he's going to have a big year 2. I believe he's going to have at least 800 yards. He's probably going to have about 5 touchdowns. I have very high expectations for James Washington because, I mean, this guy has a lot of talent. He's a speed demon. He runs routes pretty good. And Big Ben is still raving about this guy, even though he, kind of showed him some tough love against Denver. Big Ben still has a lot of faith. He talks about him nearly every time that he goes on the radio or on air. Always talks about Juju, but always talks about James Washington. So I'm expecting a lot out of James Washington this season. And even as the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver group as a whole, people think because we lost Antonio Brown, our wide receiver core is depleted. That's far from the case. We lose good wide receivers all the time. We lost Hines Ward. And when Hines Ward left, Mike Wallace stepped up. And when Mike Wallace left, we had Antonio Brown. And when Antonio Brown, now he's gone. Now we have Juju Smith-Schuster. And James Washington, is going to have to be that complementary piece to back up Juju, because Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be getting a lot of double teams. He was getting double teamed a lot last year, which is something people fail to understand. You always talk about how Antonio Brown was always getting double teamed and whatnot. Antonio Brown was getting double teamed, but Juju Smith-Schuster was getting double teamed as well. So Juju Smith-Schuster, number one wide receiver. James Washington, I expect him to be the number two wide receiver. Despite even if we do draft a wide receiver in the first round, I still expect James Washington to be that number two wide receiver, and I expect him to have a pretty big year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiving group as a whole, I have very high expectations for it. I mean, look at Ron Switzer. This guy really was an afterthought, and he came to Pittsburgh and he had a solid season, so I'm expecting a lot from James Washington, the wide receiver group as a whole, but especially James Washington being that number two wide receiver, being that wide receiver that's going to have to step up when Juju Smith-Schuster is demanding triple teams and double teams and whatnot. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about this down in the comment section down below. How good do you think James Washington will be in year 2 of his NFL career? Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. And that's